Lewanika, who was our first Minister of Science and Technology in the Chiluba government. Honorable, welcome, sir.
Thank you very, very much, sir. This is a very welcome opportunity.
Amen.
In your new role as a TV star. I'm glad to join you. I'm very, very honored to be here.
It is me who is honored. Yes. Honorable, Camnet TV viewers, whoever comes on the platform, they would like to know who is Honorable. Before we get to what you have done for this nation, before Honorable became Honorable, at one time he was a Mongo boy playing that soccer in the sand. And the people would want to know who is Honorable Akashambatwa.
Okay, Akashambatwa mixed. I was born in 1948. Lusakile African Mine Workers Compound in Nkana, Kitwe. The only city which was so great they had to name it twice.
How was it named twice?
Nkana, Kitwe.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's not like Lusaka or something. So it's Nkana, Kitwe. I was born in Nkana, Kitwe in Lusakile African Mine Workers. I say that to make clear that my background is that actually even the year I was born was 1948, as I've said. It is a very important year, both in our family and in Zambian history, because that is also the year when the first African political organization was established, the Northern Rhodesia African Congress, with my father as the founder president general. And the generation of my father had to play many roles. You find that him and his generation of leaders, they founded the political movement. They also founded the trade union movement. They also served in the social welfare system of the Africans in the mine. So when I was born, my father was as a welfare officer in Usakile, in Nkana mine, which was owned by Anglo-American. And but at the same time, he was 4 years before I was born. He was the founder president of the Kitwe African Society in 1944. Before that, he had been the founder secretary of the Livingstone African Welfare Society in 1928. The inspiration is that he was only 24 years old. And that was the first welfare society in an urban area. An area welfare society was founded in Mwenzo, 1924, under the chairmanship of Mr. Donald Suwale. I mention this because I have to start with the generation of my father, that this is the heritage I have. And so I was born at a close range. That although Mr. Suwale was chairman of the first welfare society in Mwenzo, when my father became president of the African National Congress, he was one of the committee members. That the generation of our parents, their leadership was voluntary. Their leadership, they did not fight for position. And their leadership was unlimited. In every field they could serve their society, they did, and they worked together. Another example like that was that the Kitwe African Society in 1944, 2 years later, it proposed that the African welfare societies should be constituted into a federation. So the Northern Rhodesia Federation of African Welfare Society was formed in 1948, in which Mr. Daut Yamba became the president. And then 2 years later, in 1948, it was resolved that while this welfare service was necessary, they had to move a stage further and now form a political organization, which was the Northern Rhodesia African Congress. So you can imagine Mr. Yamba, who had been president of the Welfare Federation, in his absence, he was picked to be the vice president to my father in the first Congress. So this also shows that they were ready to play whatever role was assigned to them. They didn't fight for position. They were volunteers. They did not get paid for providing leadership.
So it was the nation at heart.
Yes, and collective leadership. The slogan of the Northern Region National Congress, there are two. The best known one is one man, one vote. But the most critical one to myself was that the second slogan of them was leadership by team spirit. And they worked as a team. Decision making were not made by the president or the chairman. They were made by consensus of the collective of the leadership. I mention this because when we move forward to today, that these are some of the characteristics of leadership we inherited. And I was very conscious of them myself as I grew up. But these are also the characters of leadership we have lost, but which we need to recapture.
We'll come to that.
So, I was born in 1948. I give you the background I was born in. In our neighborhood, we had Mr. Katilungu, Lawrence Katilungu, who was the trade union leader. And as I said, but they were the same people who also founded Congress. So I grew up in the part of Usakile where the leadership of the African community was. From all sorts of, some came from Tanganyika, some from Nyasaland, some from Zimbabwe, and so on. So it was a cosmopolitan place where I grew up with. I started school at Usakile African Mine Workers Primary School. My mother was a teacher there. I should say that she was one of the first teachers. There were 3 of them when they started Usakile School, 1942. The headmaster was Mr. Harry Nkumbula. The teacher was teaching adults was Mr. Simon Kapwepwe, and my mother was teaching children. So that is the first place I went to school with. But within my first year, it wasn't grade 1, it was sub-A. Within my sub-A class, my eldest brother, who had been going to school in South Africa, came on holiday. And as we were rushing to the railway station in Nkana, in Kitwe, my father said, let's hurry up. Your brother's train is coming. So when we arrived at the station, this train came. And I thought it was owned by my brother. So he became my first biggest hero. So when he found a job to teach at Munali, I insisted that I must go and live with my hero. So the next 3 years of my primary school, I did at Munali, a school called Tunduya, which is still there. So from the age of 6 to 8, 9 or so, I was brought up at Munali, within the Munali area at Tunduya School. Then in 1958, I went back home to Kitwe to do my standard 3 and 4 at Kalela School. I'm now name dropping. One of my schoolmates was Fred Mwila, who became a big football star. And I was so proud. One day I was watching TV in America in the 70s, and he was then playing for Atlanta.
Yes,
before soccer was popular in America. They were the ones who really put it on TV. So those were my schoolmates. And within Usakile, the others we grew up with were Nobi Simbe, who became a commander of the army, and all sorts of people. The Lemi Chipiris were our big brothers in the compound. So that is my background. Then after that, for my standard 5 and 6, I came to Chalimbana, which is in Chongwe. Did the standard 5 and 6. Met other friends, David Nkata, George Kateka. It was again a cosmopolitan kind of environment. Right alone, I went to school in England at a place called Bethany School in Kent, in England. This, by coincidence, in 1959, my father had gone to New Zealand, and his name appeared in the newspaper. Then one of the readers noticed his name, and he phoned him up, said, no, in 1902, he had been at school with my father's elder brother, who later became Litunga Imwiko the first, the father of the present Litunga. So they met, and he said, no, you must continue the tradition. There must be someone in the family who's at this age group to go. So I was lucky enough to be sent. So I went to England, the Bethany School, because although I had not done Form 1 here, my age was that my age mates were in Form 3. So I was put in Form 3. And in those days, all levels were done in Form 4. I did that. Then I did my A-levels there for 2 more years. Then, while I was at that school, some Canadian young man, actually, who was not even a teacher, but he found a job there for us. And he came with all sorts of music, the blues, jazz, and stuff like that. And I really associated with him. And that made me want to go to America. So my father didn't think I should at that time. So we compromised that, okay, instead of going directly to America, I'll go to the Oxford College of Further Education, which I did for a year, before he allowed me to go to America. So in 1967, I went to America. And this was the age when the civil rights movement was not at a peak, but it was still very, very strong. In fact, the following year in 1964, I saw Martin Luther King. 68. I saw Martin Luther King, and when he was organizing, mobilizing people, moving from town, state to state, mobilizing people to support the street cleaners in Memphis, who were being underpaid and mistreated, and it turned out to be his last campaign. So during his mobilization, which I attended, we were all fired up. And the churches there were organizing transport for us to go and join the march. So 2 days later on the news, we heard that he had been shot. And we were supposed to have gone to Memphis the following morning to join the campaign. So I was very baptized in the civil rights movement. Later on, when I went to graduate school at Cornell, the college I first attended in America was Jackson. It was a historically black college, which also is very, very important to me, because when I went there, it was the time when black Americans wanted very much to know about Africa. They wanted very much to exhibit the African culture. So I was assumed to be an expert. I remember one of the churches invited me to go and speak about African religion. Me, I was brought up in Usakile. There are no African religions. So I had to read up to prepare for my speech, which went down very, very well. So this inspired me to read a lot about Africa. Then my own fellow colleagues, because they would ask you questions about Tunisia, about Nkrumah, so I ended up having to really read a lot, which I still continue to do. So I continue to read everything about Africa and the African world. So by the time I went to graduate school, I was very steeped into the black American struggle for civil rights. The black Muslims even, I attended their meetings. The Black Panther Party, when it was formed, I associated with them. When I went to graduate school at Cornell, which was now your historically white colleges, these super colleges in America, like Harvard and so on, it's one of those. That's when I was exposed to other Africans from the continent. So we started participating in support for the Southern African liberation struggle, which included Guinea-Bissau, and the Angola, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, South Africa, and so on. So that also induced me to know a lot about what the African freedom struggle was all about, the Pan-African movement, its history, and so on and so forth. So that's why I started my graduate school at Cornell. I went on to Canada to do my second master's degree in Canada, then came back home. My first job, by the way, when I came back, it was about 1974. For 3 months. In those days, it was unheard of. I know young people today, they can take 6 years to find a job. But in those days, if you took 3 months to find a job, you felt in distress. But after 3 months, I got a job. To my shock, they appointed me as Deputy General Manager of Indico Milling in Ndola. I didn't think I was fit. But when I got to Ndola, I found out that my General Manager had only just graduated with his first degree 6 months before, and he was more or less my age mate. So we teamed up a bit. So my first job was Indico Milling. We were at that time setting up the mill in Kabompo and that sort of thing. Then later on, I didn't stay very long there. I was appointed Deputy General Manager of National Milling, which was a bigger milling company. After that, there was a dispute between the Zambian government and their partners in national milling, because the government had nationalized it, but only to 51%. So the government owned 51%, and Anglo-American owned 49%, but they had a big voice in the board. Now, the board was interested in pressurizing for the government to allow them to raise the price of meal. And the government was resisting because there was price control in those days, which was very tough. And they threatened that if we don't allow them to raise the price, then the project they had in mind, which was Choma Milling, would be put on hold. The government called them bluff and transferred the project to Indico Central, me included. So I ended up as senior project manager at Indico, senior project officer at Indico. And my first project was Choma Milling, starting from -0, looking for land, feasibility study, contracting, all sorts of contractors, civil, plant machinery, recruitment, up to commissioning. I rose within Indico to be the group director of projects. In that role, I think in every province in Zambia, we had at least 2 or 3 projects that we established under the model which had been advised by the World Bank of import substitution. So among those projects are the Mansa batteries, Chipata bicycles, intravenous fluid in Kabwe, several maize mills. The Choma maize mill itself got commissioned in the end. And in many ways, that was the biggest college I had, because that was the most interesting job, including NCZ, the second extension of NCZ, because with projects development, it means with each project, you had to learn new things.
Absolutely.
If it was a chemical project, you don't want to look stupid in these meetings, you had to read up. I remember when I was working on nitrogen chemicals, when the experts would try to lose me by taking, I ended up looking for some chemistry book and wished when I had a chance I had really taken it seriously. So it was a very interesting job, and that was my most interesting job. Then while I was there, one of the projects we did was Mansa batteries, as I said. In our project feasibility studies, we had wanted Mansa batteries. We had proposed that Mansa batteries, what turned out to be Mansa batteries, should actually be Kabwe batteries in Kabwe because the mine there was already weakening, but one of the products they were producing could be used on batteries. And within Kabwe Kapiri area, the raw material was found, and we thought we could save some jobs in Kabwe. So that was our rationale. The other one was the bicycle plant. It was supposed to be in Luansha because Luansha mine, even at that stage, was faltering for the same reason that you needed some other industries there. But the political leadership ordered us to take the battery factory to Mansa, the bicycle factory to Chipata. And I'm mentioning this because now we had to re-rationalize our proposal. So we tried to justify...
Which year was this, Honorable?
This was now 78, 79, that sort of way. Now, we had to now say, oh yeah, we should take it to Mansa because we'll take employment there, we'll use manganese in the area, and since they don't have electric power, they will use batteries. But after we commissioned it, when I was director of project, to my shock, I discovered that of all the people we employed at Mansa Batteries, only 4 were local people. The rest are the same people recruited from Lusaka, from Quito, everywhere else. Among the 4 who were local people, 3 were security guards, which means the flagged justification that by taking Mansa Battery to their employing was fake. The raw materials we needed, the quantities we needed for the whole year could be collected within a very short period. And we were collecting them from hills owned by nobody. So we collected the raw materials, paid nobody, so nobody benefited from supplying the raw material to the batteries. Then we also discovered that there is no battery markets because the Africans figured out a long time ago, those who need batteries, that if you put it in the sun, it regenerates. So you don't need to keep buying batteries. And they were only using batteries mostly for radios, which can last forever. So that experience, I won't go into detail on the Chipata, but more or less the same outcome in the Chipata bicycle. The only difference is that in the case of Chipata, at least the local people bought bicycles.
Now, Honorable, wonderful elaboration of that background. When did you stop? At which point did you stop all those wonderful positions you held? Because the people who may not know you, they don't even know that you are actually the founder, one of the founders of MMD.
Yes.
I hear a lot of people who say I was a founder of MMD, but that time you were...
I'll address both. In fact, this story, the reason I'm mentioning Mansa Batteries is because when I realized that what we thought was development
was not
to rural was not there. So I went back to school to examine why is it not there. And that's when I discovered that the model of development we have adopted is not local. It is actually not meant to provide employment. It is inherently designed in a fashion of perpetual dependency. And the little labor it needs from the rural areas, it only succeeds in depriving villages of the most critical labor they need to feed themselves. So it is also an undermining force. That's why when I studied, came up, my research ended up in a book I call Milk in the Basket. And this shows that, you see, we are putting resources, like one can, if you want to keep milk and you pour it in a basket, of course, after walking a little bit, you find the basket is messed up and the milk is gone. Okay? The saying, it is actually a shortcut from an old Siluyana language, which says basically that look at the foolishness of this Nalilongo. He carries milk in a basket and puts fresh meat in a gao. So the meat rots. The meat which should be in a basket is put in a container where it rots. The milk which should be in that container is put in a basket.
Oh.
That see, our economic system we have adopted from the colonialists and failed to change since independence is like that. That we've taken resources from the villages, the labor critically needed in the village, we've taken them to the mines where they are least. They may be needed there, but the outcome does not feed those people. So that is basically how I came. But one of the other conclusions of my study was that why are these policies that look so senseless being carried on? My conclusion was that if the people understood and if the people were empowered to choose government, and if those chosen to govern understood that in order to be re-elected, they have to please those people, they would not have such policies. The people themselves say, if it is structural adjustment, you may need it, but they will be able to say, if you go this far, our shoes are pinching. And if they pinch too much, we won't vote for it. So I felt that the economic policies, were the way they were because they were not actually directly controlled by the people. The leadership was, in determining its economic policies, is not being responsive to people, and the people have no leverage to control them, particularly under a one-party state, where you have the party is already chosen, the candidates come from the same party. For you to progress, you need to support that party. So this is what now led me to think that the first thing we have to do is get rid of the one-party state. Retain the powers of Zambians to form or not form, to join or not join parties of their choice. Reinstate the value of the vote. Because if you are going to be given a limited choice, that devalues your vote. So that in the hope that once the people get back that vote, they will be able to be respected by their leaders, they will be able to control their leaders, and that you can't get proper economic policies that are responsive to the people if the people are politically disempowered. So that is basically, so when I came back, I won't go into my, but when I came back, somehow Indico was still unhappy with me. Fortunately, they wanted to punish me by sending me back to Kitwe, to a small company called Zambia Ceramics, which I had not even completed. It had been one of my small projects. But this, one, I was back home. Two, I had a lot of time. I had dealings with the trade unionists. And so my thoughts from my studies and my book had actually enough fresh air to be refined. I ended up being chairman of the Economics Association of Zambia for 3 years. In fact, from 87 up to 1990 until we went into power. We used the Economic Association platform to link up with the trade union movement, the cooperative movement, and anybody else who I could hear, because I didn't know many people intimately. But if I hear someone say something in the news which shows that they are critical, I would approach them. The trade union looked like occasionally they will attack government, we approached them. So we wanted to have an alternative program to that. So in many ways, the original agenda of MMD is about that. We were promising the people that development and democracy, because now we are using the language of the 90s. But this democracy and democracy was not new, because in independence, the promise of independence was freedom and progress.
That is by our fathers,
yes.
Dr. Kaunda.
Now, we merely elaborated that the freedom we want is full democratization, and that the progress we want is genuine development. Because by that time, my generation particularly of intellectuals, African intellectuals and Latin American intellectuals, we were now beginning to understand that underdevelopment is not a starting point. You are a pastor. You know God did not create an underdeveloped world. So it is not true that people start being underdeveloped. Huh? But this is what we are taught in the economics book. That we as Africans start being underdeveloped. Then we have to develop. In fact, the underdevelopment we are suffering itself, there has been a development of underdevelopment. In other words, we have been, from self-sufficiency, we were underdeveloped. Because the system we had tied ourselves to, or the system we got tied ourselves, or the system we are still refusing to untie ourselves from, is inherently underdeveloping for the majority of our people. Because if you have an economy which assumes that you go to school, you get a profession, you get a job in the mines, the majority of people, that time will never come for the majority of people. They may even finish, as we know now, they finished grade 12, but they don't get any more employed
Absolutely.
than the others who are finishing standard 4. Okay? A few of us are driving cars, are doing all sorts of things, but the majority of our people, particularly since I retired to the Mungu area, it is pitiful. The few visits we used to make to Mungu in the 60s, in the 50s, show that the state of our villages now is worse than it was before independence. And that is not even talking about...
Why was it so honorable? Could it be that the houses were becoming dilapidated, or
No,
people had moved on?
because these mines, these mining industries and other industries along the line of rail needed a little manpower from us.
Yeah.
Now, the manpower they picked from the villages, or which came voluntarily from the villages, tended to be your most able young men who were then being taken from where they are critically needed to where they are partial. Where they were needed, the need was social. Where they are being placed, their needs are now personal, that you get your salary, you buy your chibuku, you buy your car, and so on. It does not help the whole community. But the work that this labor was doing in the village was actually social development in nature. Whether they are cultivating, they are fishing, it was a social activity. So that has been undermined. Even now, when we try to take development to the rural area, we are still using the failed model. Right now in Mungu last week, I learned of some projects called Fighting Climate and things, because all these ideas are imported for change, but they are telling village headmen that you can participate in this project, but you must sign a document giving up your land.
Anna.
Today. And these are government officials.
Is this...
Now, that is happening now.
In 2020?
Yes, it's happening now. And you know, if it can happen in Barosland, the rest of this Zambia, I don't know what's happening there. Because at least in Barosland, the traditional system is quite intact. Local people frown when you sell land. So there is at least social pressure against it. But that social pressure is being broken. It's weakening. And this model, which say what the message to our villagers is that for you to get to develop, leave your village, get a job elsewhere. For you to develop, sell your land. For you to get investors, exchange whatever they bring with your land. These are models of absolute accelerating. That process of developing underdevelopment has been accelerated. Because I must also say that at the time of independence, 96% of the land in Zambia was under customary law. Now, the black government, which has been marketed as being freedom fighters, nationalists, anti-imperialism, pro-development, have sold our country. They used to bring up Zambia as Aluanika, sold your country. But our traditional leaders protected that land. When we got independence, we found that land in African hands. Since independence, gradually it has been transferred. Now people are talking the Chinese buying that. You see, so that model itself is a major problem, the model of development. And the delinkage between the economic policies and the needs of the people has widened.
Before we go further into that, Honorable, I'm interested, you are through with your academics, you are through with your directorship and everything. You started coming together to form MMD.
Yes.
If I may put this way, what wrong things did you see in Dr. Kaunda, apart from the one-party system? Apart from the one-party system, what wrong things did you see economically?
The one-party system is everything because it guided your economic policies. And it was founded on the premise that you can dictate. In other words, that you trade off democracy and freedom, because it was said that if you have too much debate and so on, you won't decide, development will suffer. So Zambians were taught that we had to sacrifice our freedom and our democracy for the sake of development. Other Africans have said, oh, look at South Korea, they had a dictator, and so they have even sold the idea that actually Africans need a little bit of dictatorship. Now, unfortunately, a little bit of dictatorship will not always stay as a little bit. It becomes the culture of dictatorship, of one-man rule. So that the one-party state, when freedom, I said the freedom struggle was fought on bringing freedom to Africans and progress, which is development. Now, when you go into government, then suddenly you say, no, too much freedom is a bad thing. Then I also go back to you to find another thing fundamentally wrong with one-party state, is that it is the exact extreme opposite of that heritage I mentioned of our founding leaders, of collective leadership, consensus decision-making, and team spirit.
It was not.
We have transformed that to a one-man show. Okay? And even propagated the idea that this is the ideal leadership. A leader who can just stand up with effect from midnight to night, this changes.
Yeah.
Now, if the country is ours, if the government is ours, then I don't care how wise you are. I don't want you to say, me, I should put my brains aside and let you, the great man, think for me. And that my only law is to follow your instruction. So that the personalization of state leadership, political leadership, the capture of the state by a party, those are the fundamental ills of the one-party state. Our failure since officially leaving the one-party state is that in practice we haven't changed.
This is what I wanted to say.
That is the failure. Not that our failure is not that we shouldn't have removed one-party state. Is that when we removed it, we should have removed it body and soul.
And formulate new
ideas. And of course, the challenge is that if for 17 years, for 27 years, the model of leadership you are teaching people is basically dictatorial, a superstar. Even today, Zambians, the reason why 2021 may not change anything, because you are still looking for another Kaunda. See, so it's a question, is Lungu Kaunda enough? No, maybe HH is more Kaunda. But we are looking for a one-man leader to solve our problem. Now, that is the betrayal of the pioneer leadership of the freedom movement in Zambia. The example they gave us, I wish sometimes I could just, of the people I can remember off my head, of my father's generation, just get maybe 20, 100 of them and write their stories, their public service, their spirit of leadership, voluntary leadership.
Actually,
so that the one-party state actually is the one that has created the problems we are in now.
But wait a minute, Honorable. Okay, apart from the one-party state, when you look at what the one-party state brought, schools, infrastructure, roads, and if we start naming them one by one, Kafue Gorge,
they were not brought by the one party. You see, another, again, that is part of the fault line, where we want to give credit. I mean, it's all nice for propaganda to say Lungu has built a bridge, but you know he hasn't. So, Kaunda didn't build a school. The schools were built by Zambians.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay? So, but if you tell people that all you need is another Superman, not someone like you, not someone like your brother, not somebody like that, it means they are not looking at them. So what can we do? What can we contribute to? How valuable are we to the system as a collective, as a society, as a nation? So that actually does a lot of brain damage.
No, what I meant, Honorable, is this.
But I understand, because what you are saying is that these schools were built. But, you know, I think I was telling my nephew the other day, there's a history book that has never been written. Its title is What If? So there is nobody who can tell you, what if there was no one-party state? After all, look at the development between 1964 and 1992. Okay? All these major roads to Mungu were built there. Schools in provinces were built there. Because when you praise the one-party state, you include the contribution which were made before 1972. And you forget that actually, after the one-party state, the economy of Zambia collapsed.
No.
From 1973, which was the first year of the one-party state, Zambia was in economic regression non-stop for 25 years. Yes, non-stop. So, this, I was telling you about the Mansa batteries we built. Why could they not be sustained? Because the economy had collapsed. At one time, there was only one institution which was international credit worthy, and that was ZCCM. By the end of the one-party state, even ZCCM was not credit worthy.
Oh, really?
Yes, and we were indebted. I mean, we used to campaign that the debt burden is $1,000 per Zambian by the end of the one-party state. So that it is very selective memories and also misplacement of credit. Okay. And denuding the credit that goes to all Zambians.
That misplacement of credit, I must say that maybe it's in the way we eulogize certain people. But I'm saying, like, if you look at America, I like the American system. There, they say Donald Trump administration, Bush administration. That administration of the Kumbulas, the Kapwepwes, the what.
I don't even support that idea that is a Donald Trump administration, because one is not true. You know? In America, the president is just one institution among many. You can even have a crazy man there, but there is a limit to how far his craziness can set up. First of all, you have over 50 states. Each of them is actually almost in every aspect a state like Zambia. Even at county level, they have their own police force. They elect their own judges. That is not even at state level, let alone at the federal level. This was the challenge of the civil rights movement. that since the problem was being caused by the governance systems at state level, they had to appeal to the federal government. And it had difficulties in finding a way to influence because they said they are state rights. The FBI, which is their police force, is a federal police force. But below the federal level, all these police people who are shooting black people in America, they are not under the federal government. They are not even under state government. Some of them are under city governments. So that in America, you can casually say it's a Bush administration. It's not dangerous. In Africa, if you say that this is an Amin administration, they really mean it. Huh? That whether you go to school, whether you go to hospital, you have to worship the man they say is the honor. When they say Mobutu is the father of the Congo, he really means it. It's not just a ceremonial title. When you say Kaunda is the founder of Zambia, it means you are brainwashing the children. And it's a mental damage. And the difficulty we have in rectifying Zambia is you can correct buildings, you can repair buildings, but how do you repair minds?
But this is why, Honorable, I asked, when you formed MMD, what is it that you were fighting against? We have established that you were fighting
let's first say, what were we fighting for? We were saying the independence struggle promised us freedom and progress. After independence, the parts, these have been retracted, they've been betrayed. I can even give you a very specific example. In the independence dispensation, and Zambians have not been taught to what extent it was negotiated. That the Europeans who had decided that they will continue to be Zambian, even after a black government, they had interests, they had concerns. Mostly their concern was about property, possibility of reverse racism, and things like that. By the time we went into independence in 64, October, there had been an election in January 64. So, and the British, for their own interests, which are questionable, decided that after this election, there will be no other election before independence, that they would deal with the government that has won. So by the time we were negotiating independence, the African National Congress knew that they were going to go into an independent Zambia as an opposition party. So they had concern. Is this new Zambia going to be multi-party? Is the leader of the opposition going to be recognized? Will there room for opposition? So they had those concerns. Barosiland also had concern. Are they going into Zambia or are they becoming independent like Botswana? Some of the Barosis wanted Barosiland to go into Zambia. At the time of independence, that was the popular feeling. But then they said, okay, if we are going to go into Zambia, let's negotiate the condition. So they had conditions negotiated. Okay. Now, the independence dispensation gave assurances to all those people with concern. UNIP, of course, had the least concern because they had won the election. They were popular. And if possible, they wanted, having been the majority, to get all power. But they still negotiated a give and take agreement, which gave assurances to Barosiland that you can go into Zambia under this condition. It assured the opposition. The opposition, for instance, was assured that the leader of the opposition would be recognized. And indeed, from 1964 to 68, he was. Mr. Nkumbulo was leader of opposition. Even at the government house, he had cars and office in parliament like a minister. Then in 69, those privileges were removed.
By who? The government?
It was announced by the speaker, but obviously with the sanction of the majority party. Okay? The Barosiland Agreement was abrogated. the property assurances given to European settlers was abrogated. You nationalized them. The freedom, one man, one vote, that each Zambian, as an adult, you have that vote, was compromised when they imposed the one-party state. Because now you could vote for any party of your choice as long as it is unique. You could vote for any candidate of your choice as long as they are unique. You could vote for a president of your choice, but the other option is a frog. The other one is this handsome man, Mr. Kaunda. So the right to vote was compromised. The agreements made in the independence dispensation were compromised and undermined. Now, what allowed this was the usual divide and rule. You see, when the Barotseland Agreement was abrogated, the headline in one of our newspapers, I don't know if it's the Daily Mail or Times, was that the Litunga is just like another chief. Okay? Very celebration. Now, a casual look would say, oh, they've punished the Litunga. But the same rule punished Mwata Kazembe. When they took away the Barotseland treasurer, they also took the native treasurer from Mwanza-Bombwe. The Zambians don't know that. Because they were meant to focus, to celebrate. It's like when they jail an opposition party. You pretend as if, oh, it's them. But in the end, there is this famous poem by a preacher, a German preacher, but they first came for the communists. I said nothing because I was not a communist. This is what has happened. They first abrogated the Barotseland Agreement. I didn't say anything because I'm not Baros. So when they took away the Mwanza-Bombwe treasurer, you couldn't say anything. They first denied recognition of the leader of opposition. The day you become a leader of the opposition, you suffer that.
May I ask this, Honorable? Would I be right to say then that from what you have explained, which is factual, is this the reason why now us, as young people, are suffering the tribal effects because of the lack of balancing?
Yes, but it's also introduced. I didn't elaborate. This is what I was saying. I wish I could have remember the names of 100 and write them down. I've told you that my father in Kitwe, there were more Machusas and Kasais in Kitwe than Lozis. Okay, but he became president of the Kitwe African Society. He became president of the African National Congress. His vice was Mr. Dautuyaba. So that, you see, they worked as a collective. Now, unfortunately, very soon after the 1950s, by the mid-50s, this ethnic element was introduced. Those of us who are born in Usakile may even be politically incorrect. Say, tribalism. Because the more they came, they were the only ones who didn't get integrated into this cosmopolitan urban
settings
that was growing up on the Copper Belt, that was growing up in Chilenje, that was growing up in Malamba, that was growing up in Matero or something like that. So after a while, people came to town in their ethnic courts and kept them. Even in the old days, they came in their courts, but after you've been in Usakile for 2 years, you come a little bit detribalized. You see, because your friendship, your family relationship, your neighborhood is. But after a while, we stopped that process of integration. And one thing about integration, the greatest thing about human integration is that it is natural. Okay? So you don't need to force it. And sometimes when you force it, you cause it to stop functioning, to stop developing. In other words, if I order you that, starting from tomorrow, I want your secretary to not to be Bemba. I want this and this. One, either you are going to disobey me, or you figure out creative way that you choose somebody called Miss Ruvinda, whom you know that his mother is Mwansa, but her surname is Ruvinda. So you start those tricks, just like this famous tribal balancing. I always make a joke that I can make a very tribally balanced cabinet, just from my neighborhood to Saki. But those people are almost my brothers, whether they are Tumbukas or not. So it is not balancing anybody. Anybody can tribally balance if from each area you pick your puppet, you pick your dependent, you pick a user-friendly person. The challenge is that can you lead a real multi-ethnic society where this ethnicity, if you are going to recognize them as such, choose their own leaders who come in the cabinet rather than you choosing. So that you get rid of Mr. Kapwepwe, you bring in Mrs. Kankasa. Is that balance? But if you count Bembas, you're still balanced.
You know.
But in terms of force, you get rid of Mundia and you bring Masheke from the army. The army, you've been training them to be loyal to you. Then you say, oh, after all, we still have the same losses in the government. So tribal balancing itself has been a fake instrument and it's a detraction. If you are honest, what needs to be balanced is development. What needs to be balanced is political power. You see, America had an African as president for 8 years, Obama. For black American, you can't become more African than that. But he was still president of a historically white, racist America. The system there is racist. And it does not change merely because you've put a black man at the top. In fact, it may actually change less. Because Clinton was freer to choose black people in his cabinet without apology. Obama, if he chose a black person in his cabinet, he had to bring in a Japanese, bring in a Mexican. He's almost doing it in a guilty fashion. No. It's like now they could bring you to, so you are Lozi, you are Minister of Foreign Affairs. So superficially, you can choose ambassadors.
Now, Honorable, that I admit, it's a problem. And the problems which we have inherited.
But what's important, we inherited it, but it was developed. It was not there in the beginning.
I know that.
So we must investigate at what time in the 1950s was this tribal card introduced?
This is why.
And who introduced it?
This is why now I want to say this, that me being a pastor, I know for sure that the heart of man is corrupt, above all things.
Yes.
Whether this tribe, that tribe, this what, whoever is there, the heart of man, bottom line, is corrupt. I'll tell you one example, Honorable. One of my closest friends, you know him, is Michael Mutemwa. The father was a judge in Ndola.
Yes.
Michael Mutemwa is in South Africa. Because of our features, people would meet him, they say Chiluba, they meet me, they say Mutemwa. You know, we said we are twins, you know, same father, different mothers. And we have walked for a long time like this, and people don't know. If we don't talk about tribes, they don't know. For me, I'm comfortable, such that him and I, when we come together, there is nothing like Barose, Chinsali, what? We are brothers. Why? Because of Christ putting us together, and we understand this. But our fathers are also coming from the background where the lordship of Christ was just a by the way, or going to church.
No, but you are starting your fathers midway. Huh? Mr. Donald Swale translated the Bible in Namwanga. My father translated the Bible into laws. Our first generation of leaders, whether it's the Dao Tinyamba, they were very religious. And what is amazing about them is that they were Christians, but very respectful and rooted in their tradition, also very attracted to modernity. They had a vision that you could Christianize us, you could modernize us without de-Africanizing us. Now, that balance is the one that began to be destroyed.
By who?
By the leadership that came into the forefront in the mid-50s.
That was before Dr. Kaunda.
You know, he had already come in. No, in fact, he's not to blame. In fact, in many ways, he's a victim of the introduction of this, because they chose him. Others chose him and wanted him chosen, and they supported his choice on ground that he didn't belong to any tribe. That also is tribalism. Okay? Because I shouldn't require, it's good you say Mutemwa is your brother and so on. When you are together, being lost, being inside doesn't matter. That's fine. But if you were to say, in order for Mutemwa to be your brother, it's better off if he was also from Chinsari. That is wrong. In other words, it's your background. There's no reason why you shouldn't be proud of it. But it also doesn't make you unmixable with other people. So that basically, there are many reasons why KK was chosen. But one of the consistent narrative is that his greatest qualification was that he was neither Lozi, was no Bemba, he wasn't that, okay? Which means the minute you choose a leader on that basis, it may be innocent. It may be solving your immediate problem, but it sows a seed that in leadership choice in the future, you should consider.
How did you choose my namesake, President Chiluba, with all that background, 1991,
first of all,
now you are fighting?
Before he became president, as I say, I've given my background from trying to study this problem, thinking I've come up with a solution, working with unionists and so on. So towards the end, we were now doing field work, real field work. So I would identify people that, oh, this one has made this statement, it seems maybe we made them. So I'll approach them. So with Mr. Chiluba, I had some difficulties in accessing him because he was very security conscious. I remember one time we were supposed to meet, and I was anxious. I was in Nairobi. I heard he was in Nairobi. And this is the time when my mind was very active, trying to mobilize. And I thought he was key. I tried to meet, I talked to him, then he said, okay, we agreed that we'll meet at the High Commissioner's residence, who had invited us to dinner, all of us. Unfortunately, the High Commissioner was Mrs. Kankasa, whom Chiluba thought was a Kaunda puppet. So he said, no, she will poison me. So he didn't come, I missed him. And at many workshops where, because one of my organizing activities in the early days was as a resource person to trade union and so on. I would be a resource person at a trade union and I would look forward you come. Either you come and go, I didn't have chance. So finally, so I knew all the trade union leaders except him. Finally, Mbita Chitala and me, I asked Mbita to accompany me to Kitwe because the trade union movement had made a statement that the Zambian economy should be solved by us going to an American dollar. So I was young, I thought you can correct any mistake, so I went to meet them to try to explain that no, Liberia has an American dollar, but it's a mess, that cannot be the problem and so. But in the process of discussing with Mr. Sampa, Mr. Zimba, they insisted that no, you must meet the chairman general. So they made us contact. So the following day we went to Ndola, to his office at Atlas Co. And I explained to him our vision, what we wanted, how we thought we could. And he was taken. I mean, because at that time, his thinking was the traditional African, that you can only change an African government by a military coup. And I don't know if I can say it now, but I can say that the other previous attempts always assumed that if you have a military coup, you need the trade union movement to mobilize the workers. So that is the role he was being cast for. Now, when I came up with this very open, that we can actually have a public conference and work out policies, criticize the present system, propose the outcome system, he accepted it. He even invited us to lunch. Although in the end he had no money, but I was then still general manager of Blackwood Hodge, so I had credit there. So we agreed at that table. At that time, I looked up to the union movement. I thought they are the big league, they are the contacts, and so we assigned to them that, okay, you do the fundraising, we will do the other organizational work. This was about March, April 1990. Then, to give us extra assurance, he said, me and Mr. Zimba, actually, next week we are going to Geneva. And I was imagining if you go to Geneva, that's where the Swiss banks are, blah, blah, bring lots of money. But they overstayed. Then there was a Luchembe coup. Then we decided that no, we don't want to have a master sergeant door here. With or without the Chilubas, we are going ahead with our program. By that time, what is now the MMD resolution, we already had a draft. It was going to be called the Musotunya Declaration. Because I thought these guys will bring in so much money, we can have this conference at Musotunya. Now we had to finance it ourselves. And I only managed to get half of the pay that was needed at Garden, with the assurance that the rest will come. By that time they had come back, but we had already basically started to organize with or without them. And what was worse was that towards the D-Day, Mr. Chiluba's advice to me is that their intelligence system was that we are going to be arrested, so let's postpone it. At that time, I was young, militant, audacity, maybe I didn't even know Kaunda enough to fear him. We told them that if they are with us, they'll come. If they are not with us, we know they are with Kaunda. And it turned out that while we were at Garden, they didn't come until towards lunchtime. Some of his people were there. AJS Mukupa, I remember him very well, who was like the deputy for their research wing. And me and AJS had drafted Mr. Chiluba's statement to Garden. And so finally we made contact with them. And they came. By that time, to our shock, the place was fired up. It was almost, since you are a pastor, it was almost spiritual, because I'd never seen Zambians speak out so openly, fearlessly, to anybody. So when they came in, they found it was fire. But earlier than that, the day before that, they had not assured us that they are coming. And the day I was making my last preparation, I should just add this because I'm remembering my dead colleagues. Lemi Mshota. It was curfew time. But he broke curfew to come and double check that, are we still going? So I told him that right now, if you had come earlier, you would have found Mr. Chiluba's agent who came here to urge us not to go. But I told them off. So Remis, in front of a pastor, I can't say that. He brought out a brandy bottle. We were listening to Malcolm X, Martin Luther King to boost our morals, our spirits. And then I remember him saying, Aka, even if it's just you and me, we are going to go there. So that's the spirit with which we went to Garden. When I arrived at Garden, I was given a ride actually by Bob's chief, who bypassed me while I was waiting. Then he reversed in his nice car, then drove me to Garden. I had talked to his brother, I had not talked to him. His brother had agreed to come, him I hadn't talked to. So he dropped me there. There was nobody there. They hadn't prepared the chairs. And the workers there told me that Mr. Boo, who was then in London, had phoned them that the intelligence system of Zambia has called him to say some rebels are using your hotel. So, by then I'd paid them half. So I said, no, this is a conference. This is just a seminar. So after a while, those who were there, the managers agreed, started making the chairs. The first person to come for an hour I was alone was Edith Nawake in a cab. So I told her that I don't know if anybody else is coming. And these people are demanding that you've only paid half. We need the other half. So being a business lady, she immediately, more than me, I'm not business minded at all. So she said, no, we'll set a table right at the door. So as people come, we'll ask for donations. And we tell these people that by lunchtime we'll pay you the balance. So she was actually our first treasurer. She set up a table. But after some time, people started coming. Some hesitantly, some... But by 10 o'clock, the meeting was off. By 11:30, Mr. Chiluba and Sampa came. By that time, even me, I was so liberated. I was so liberated that I thought we could change the world. So that's how we went to Garden, in that spirit. Then, because we were so super Democrats, we set up a democratic system of electing the leaders. It was not perfect, but I think up to now, it's the only democratic election MMD has ever held. Because the forces were such that you couldn't get a clique of people to bribe people, to terrorize people. Nobody had powers to appoint you ambassador and things like that. So somehow in that space, we are able, with a delegation of about 1,000, maybe 100 from each province, to have a real democratic election. We feared that Mr. Chiluba might win, whom we didn't think was very suitable for that. But the other candidate was Mr. Arthur Wina, Mr. Shamwana, who was like our Mandela, and Mlemba. So some of us tried to talk to these three that please, just among you, let one person run. At one time, a group of us, I think Dr. Sondash was there, this guy who was MP for Pemba was there, and myself, I think it was honestly, we got them together. Proposed that to give us one candidate, they failed. Then we left them, that we are leaving, we are coming back after 2 hours. When we come back, give us one name. When we came back, they failed. So one of my crimes is that then I introduced this 50%. To say, okay, then since we have so many candidates, let the one who's going to be elected at least get 50%. If he doesn't, we have a rerun so that we'll have just 2 people. Mr. Chiluba got 64.7%. So he didn't win it on my account. But as Democrat, we thought, well, I mean, those are the rules we set up. So we accepted. And our acceptance was also based on the fact that we were going into this election with a very elaborate alternative program. That as long as this program, which is ours together, is the driving program, really, if somebody has won, you just have to support them and be with them.
Honorable, let me ask you this. I still go back. What wrong things did you see in the one party? Of course, that was wrong in the President Kaunda's leadership economically, which you wanted to drive and change.
One have said that the Zambian economy had collapsed.
It had collapsed, yes.
I don't know why people have this. This was 25 years of regression. Look at the figures. From 73 to 1991, the Zambian economy was in regression. Continuous, no break. In addition to that, it was mounting debt to an unmanageable level, which Fidel Castro even at that time said is mathematically unpayable. Even the World Bank, the IMF, and all these donors, of course, later recognized that and they've reconfigured the whole thing, still in their own interest. So the economy collapsed.
Yeah.
But before I say what was wrong with the one-party state, let me tell you what was good. The best thing about the one-party state is Kaunda. Because the problem with the one-party state is that it's dependent on the personality of a person. It's on account of his personality. Part of it, my judgment, is that he guarded jealously his image as a freedom fighter. So pushed to a corner, he will not be caught dead as an open, naked dictator. Okay? So when the people were mobilized to that stage, his only choice now was either to accept change or unveil himself as a dictator. He chose not to do that. He chose not to do that. That is really credit to him and his personality. Because another person would have said that, no, to keep the system, after all, he had 2 more years. So there was no shortage of legal excuses.
Grounds, yeah.
You could have said, whether the people like me or not, we continue until the next, meet me at the next election. There are personalities like that. Okay? But the one-party state is so bad, even if you had an angel in charge of it, it would be a bad system. Because it disempowers people. It abrogates the ownership of the people, of the government.
Actually, that one, Honorable, I support you 100%. Democracy is the way to go. And I'm glad that you have answered one major for the sake of the viewers.
Yes.
Because others, you know what I've discovered in politics, Honorable, at that time, some people were just shouting, we need change.
Yes.
They didn't know what change. You are sitting here as an academician saying from 1973 to the time we began, the economy was sliding downwards. So you understood what you were changing.
Yes.
But others understood that change means get rid of Kaunda.
And bring the Kaunda of your choice.
And bring the Kaunda of your choice. And
I must say that
even
now, this is the lesson we have to learn from our history. One of the challenges, personal challenges, is that ideologically, I was much closer to the UNIPA ideology. Ideologically, I'm basically a socialist. As I tell you, I'm not a businessman. In fact, if you want me to work hard, just ask me to save. If you tell me work hard so that you buy a Mercedes, you become a millionaire, I'm not motivated. And so the Kaundas, the Nyereres, the Nkrumahs, the Sekutures, the Modibo Keita, these are my heroes. But apart from being ideologically correct, I require of them to have been Democrats. And that's where the failure is. That I admire Nkrumah, but however good his ideas were, they cannot be sustained through dictatorship. And also that the very admiration we have for them contributes to this culture of personality worship, which is fundamentally damaging. And also deinstitutionalized. Imagine how great Nkrumah was. That he gets overthrown by tin pot little soldiers. Within 2 weeks, that mass party, the CPP, disappears. There was a story of Obote, the first Obote coup against Obote. that when he was going to the conference in, was it in Singapore, I think, the Commonwealth Conference, the streets of Kampala were packed with people waving green leaves, especially when he was driving from Kampala to Entebbe. All those people had banana leaves waving at him, cheering him on. He was a big hero. At night, they hear the news that Amin has taken over. Amin drove in an open Land Rover on the same streets from Kampala to Entebbe. They picked the same leaves they waved at Obote and waved at Amin. Some ran all the way from Kampala, chasing that vehicle up to Entebbe and back. So that then it makes you know that this mass movement we thought was there. How can it disappear? Another friend of mine was doing research in Uganda, again over Obote. He wanted to go to the studio to collect all these praise songs praising Obote. 2 months after the coup, he couldn't find a single tape. And yet this is our super, on a Pan-African stage, these are the super guys. That people can break down Nkrumah's statue to wild cheering in Accra.
Like it happened to Saddam Hussein.
Yes.
Saddam
So that this one-man show, it encouraged people to fake loyalty. Because basically they have no choice. The day they are free, you don't know what they believe in. Here is a group of a whole team of KK. They were leading us to socialism, from socialism to humanism, and so on, okay? But once we changed government, some of the same people now were preaching free market economy. Even coming with evidence of how he suppressed their businesses and so on. What did they believe in? So that you are better off freeing the political space so that those who support you genuinely support you because they have a choice. If you are loved by people who are afraid that if they don't say they love you, you'll kill them. I mean, you'd be very foolish to believe that love.
But that is the norm in Africa.
That is the norm, yes. Because the objective, and this is the question we have to have, what is the objective of our leaders? Because here, if your objective is for you personally to be president, then it doesn't matter. Whether the people are voting for you by force, doesn't matter. As long as they cast that vote, you go to that state house, you do with whatever business you wanted to do there, it's fine.
But don't you think those are some of the reasons why Africa is where it is today?
That is the reason why Africa is where it is.
Because...
But it is there with popular support from Africans. Again, us as ordinary people, we can't put the blame on leaders. Because we are the one who worship them. And someone can give out gifts purporting to be coming from his pocket. He has no farm, he has no factory, and nobody asks, where does he get the money? If it's not coming from his pocket, if it's not coming from his businesses, who are donating into his pocket? What is their agenda?
This brings me to the other point, Honorable. 1991, you come into power. I remember, may their souls rest in peace. I was very close to Honorable Kafu and also Ronald Penza. I found them just where Finance Bank is now, ShopRite in town there. And I asked, we were just chatting. And they said, Pastor Chuba, we have to get rid of this man. We are coming in with brains. We want to repair.
We were the A-team.
The A-team. We have to fix the economy. We cannot be buying mini-meal like this, what.
And missing Coca-Cola and things like
Absolutely.
that.
But I think close to 10 years of your leadership as MMD in power, things did not move as they were supposed to have moved.
Yes.
what was the problem, and yet
you could even say that we probably died at Garden. We were born and dead at Garden. You see, the seeds.
Yeah.
The seeds started there. It started there, and even the process I've described, I was organizing. I mean, I was organizing people I didn't know. I would assume that if I've seen in times of Zambia pastors who say the right thing, then although he just said one right thing, even the other 10 right things which I think of myself, he also agrees with them. And when I meet you, even if I run down my 10, you nod. And me, I tick, oh, Pastor Chiluba is on our side. So I move on to another one. So then the different agendas. I remember once we were at Ralph Shenton's house in Mukushi with Mr. Chiluba, and we were, our real A team was all there. And someone made a statement in Lusaka, which came on radio. I remember Mr. Chiluba, I said, you know, the problem we have is that some of the people who are with us are short distant runners. That you see, beyond getting rid of Kaunda, beyond getting rid of UNIP, beyond, and some of them wanted the ministerial position they had under the Kaunda regime. So once they had those, this time they entered them with more preparedness of how to capitalize on them. Okay? Now, those of us who might have been innocent, were just left behind. Because we thought that the agenda is this national agenda. Meanwhile, as time went on, personal agendas, sectional agendas started taking place. The other fault line was that we shied away of actually making a revolution. We compromised by agreeing that, okay, just change Article 4 to allow multi-party, then the rest will reform afterwards. Up to today, we are still trying to change that constitution and not even going in the right direction. So one wonders, I said the book that has not been written in history is What If? What if we had put our foot down and no, let's change the constitution now in full. Then we have elections. Okay? Of course, the practical politicians who were not us, who were not me, said, no, you give Kaunda 2 more weeks.
It will be
while
another
you are changing
2 more
the constitution, you'll be tripled. So they looked like they were the practical one. But in fact, they were licensing us to make premature change, to make incomplete change, in the faith that after we are in power, we will have the freedom to change. The other fault line was that, see, we made the MMD constitution so damn democratic. Not even the president of MMD has any powers in the MMD constitution.
Really?
Everything is collective. It's either NEC or the conference or the provincial committee. It's the provincial chairman. They don't have personalized power. But so Mr. Chiluba goes to State House on the ticket of MMD, carrying the MMD constitution. But the other state constitution inherits, the only thing that has changed is one article. The rest of the constitution is a one-party constitution. Up to now, all these changes are frivolous. They
Up
do
to
not.
now?
Yes. Apart from that change of removing that, there has been no fundamental change to the Zambian constitution that has moved it even 1 inch towards being more democratic.
The Mungomba Mwanakatwe constitution.
To start with, you see, and this was argued, that the law under which those commissions were formed was the Inquiries Act, which means you propose whatever you propose, government looks at, and no government, neither the Mungomba Commission, not even the Professor Mvunga Commission, said after they gave that commission, the KKs didn't say, okay, it's our commission, we implement what you said. No, they just said, okay, we've agreed, we move first. So it was disregarded. The Mwanakatwe Commission, they picked some things, left others. The Mungomba, the same. Okay? Then now we enter into a state where we are even commissionless. Commissionless induced changes, but all of them selective. And none of them reinforce the multi-partyism. None of them reduce the personalization of power. None of them reduce the centralization of power, which is basically the fundamental disease.
Honorable.
But the other damage is that they purport to have changed the constitution. And they make some people believe that the constitution has been changed. And they could put little sweets. Like you could even have a clause, all pastors will receive $100. So it's, oh, that clause is good. Then you don't look at the other clause. Like this present one, Bill 10. So, no, if you are retired from government, you continue to be on the payroll until you are paid. So the individuals who benefit think it's a good constitution. But how many of us are in the civil service? But the tax money they are being paid comes from all of us. So if they can't rise beyond their individual needs and look at the needs of the whole society, then we are not going anywhere. Because then any government, you see, any African government particularly, maybe some of these developed government might not, any African government can make any African a millionaire. They can bring you $1 million. But they can't give every citizen $1 So if they really badly need you to further empower themselves, they can take public resources to direct him to fulfill that cause.
How long did you serve as cabinet minister?
9 months.
And you resigned?
Yes.
Why?
Well, because, you see, as I told you, the Kaundas and the Nkrumahs, these are my heroes, up to today. So I had no personal quarrel against them. And I didn't think the struggle was just to remove Kaunda. Ideologically, I was closer to UNIP. The only thing that made MMD closer to me was the democratic card. Now, once they didn't take up that card, then I didn't, up to today, I don't regard myself as a politician. I've never been a politician. I'm a reformer at best, trying to find ways to reform. We went into politics because having, as I say, credit to the UNIP leadership, they conceded. Having conceded, and they changed the constitution to allow for multi-party. So there was going to be an election. So we had to sit down and, do we fold our arms that we have succeeded in our mission and go back? Supposing we do that, and then there's an election and only UNIP is standing, then we have lost what we gain. So for tactical purposes, we formed a party to make it a context. We even had the provision that, because already there were differences, because some people wanted to say, no, if you're going to form a party, don't call it MMD. Others, more practical maybe, said, no, if we lose, this name is already selling. If you come up with another brand, you have to start new marketing. So we said that if those among us who have been with us to the struggle up to now don't want to join this party, they are free to form their own party or not to join it. And NADA was formed out of MMD in that way. Okay? So I didn't go into politics to be a politician. In fact, I'm such a bad, even the interview I've told you here, it can't win me votes. Can it?
No, it can.
No, not in Zambia. I've been in Zambia long enough. So that is not what I care about. I don't care about being popular. I don't require a leadership position.
Yeah, but Honorable, still, you see, you are an asset to the nation. You see, what I've discovered, Honorable, is failure to identify the problem.
Yes.
If, as long as a nation, we don't identify what has gone wrong, we'll keep on going.
Because we start by saying, who do I love? Who do I support? And then listen to the evidence, having already decided that this one will be acquitted, this one will be sent to jail. Any evidence that contradicts your pre-position, you disregard. Because again, being open means that you can't be sure of the outcome. Just like I was saying that some of us thought Mr. Chiluba was not the best candidate. Okay? So we set up all the rules. In fact, we made his presidency more difficult to achieve. But once he had achieved that, in other words, once he got 64%, 6.7%, we accepted it. Because we also had the right to support him or not to support him. But our major mission was not to support him or not to support him. Our major principle was to support the idea that there should be new elections for leadership. So if he wins in that game, we support him.
Now, I had the Honorable Magande on this program just some few weeks ago, and he made one statement that really got to my spirit. He said, after President Kaunda, the cabinet that came in was a cabinet of intellectuals, people who had brains, people who were up there. But that cabinet failed to rectify the problem.
Because it's like having Obama in charge of a racist America. In other words, the system we had was a super presidentialist system. Another interview we can discuss how the Zambian presidents became. It was more presidential than Dr. Banda, than Kenyatta, than anybody else, because the British designed it to be so. And it was more personalized than the others, but that's the longer story. So that we didn't change that system. Now, whether you have one of our guys, Chiluba, to sit on that chair, one, the Zambian cabinet, up to now, this is what I'm saying, the reforms we have had, they have not even scratched the surface. The Zambian cabinet is purely advisory. The agenda is set between the president and the secretary to the cabinet. A minister can propose an agenda, it's accepted or not accepted, is nothing. I think the Namibian constitution goes one step further, that there is actually voting in the cabinet. So decision are by majority vote. In Zambia, no, there is no voting.
You didn't
You discuss and then you make a decision. But basically, it's the presidential decision. If he agrees with you, fine. If he doesn't, you have nowhere else to go.
Is that the same even up to today?
Yes, it's the same up to now. So that now, if you take these brilliant people into that format, where were they brilliant? We were brilliant that I'm chief executive, like Ngandu Mugande, that you are at Lima Bank, you are the chief executive. You have real power. The minister doesn't even have the power of a managing director in Lima Bank. I don't think the minister even has the powers that I had as director of projects to make executive decision. Okay? So you have that. The other thing about intellectuals, it's half a joke, but it's a true story. I had a friend of mine in Canada who was from the Central African Republic when it became the Central African Empire. So I was asking that, where were the educating people when Bokassa was doing all these things? He said, when Bokassa came, that's when the educated people had the field today. Because even his self-crowning, it is someone with a PhD from the Sorbonne who told him how Napoleon crowned himself, how many white horses he had. So the intellectuals now become useful. Because unfortunately, intellectuals are prone to be mercenaries. much more so. Because they are mercenaries who are useful.
Is this the reason why you...
In other words, after a while, those who are expert lawyers use their expertise to assist the agenda of the president, like Mr. Mayenza Chon and his group. They were the one changing the UNIP constitution at midnight at Mulungushi to make sure that by morning when the Nkumbulas and Kapwepwes came to enter, they found that the rules had changed. And of course, KK was innocent. He's a Democrat.
Without going through.
He's a Democrat through and through.
Without
but he needed the intellectuals to do those doctoring. Okay? So, again, it's a story for another day, but the skeleton of the conception of MMD is like a three-legged African pot. In my mind, that's what it was. That we need the leg of the trade union, because I told you I'm a socialist by inclination, because you can't have a revolution without workers. You need a leg for intellectuals, because you can't have a revolution without intellectuals. Then we needed a leg for the politicians. So, even in my recruitment, if I approached you, I already had a concept that which of these legs am I recruiting you for? If I talk to Mr. Chiluba, I'm trying to get him to fulfill that role. If I'm talking to Mushota, I'm trying to him to fill in. If I'm talking to Mpande, he's an intellectual. If I'm talking to VJ, he's filling in those who were in politics, because we also needed people who knew what the political system was. So now, unfortunately, among those we put as a third leg were these former politicians who had gone into business, who were working with the chambers of commerce, whose major quarrel at that time was the foreign exchange distribution. So they made statements which I presume to be nationalistic, that, you see, devaluing the kwacha, devaluing a local currency of a country based on an export product like copper doesn't make sense. Because, you see, even if you reduce the price, you don't control the market. Okay? So it's not that if you devalue the kwacha, then people are going to rush to buy more copper. No. Or you are going to increase export. There's nothing like that. So, but of course, their fight against devaluation had to do with their day-to-day businesses. That if the kwacha devalues, then their expenses, blah, 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 go wrong. Okay? But I presumed that they had nationalistic motivation. I was blind to a passing phase of personal business interest. When we got into government, we had more or less vowed not to devalue. The first meeting, Mr. Kasonde comes and proposes devaluation. And those who were not consulted, we argued and argued. After he failed to answer our question satisfactorily, he just turns to the president that, Mr. President, you know, Mr. Chiluba didn't want to be called His Excellency. Mr. President, this matter, as you know, as we were discussing, that time when I met the IMF in September, blah, 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 you remember we said, then he said, oh, yes. So we devalued. But those were the businessmen I was expecting to say, no, if we devalue too much, our businesses will die. But now their earnings were no longer from their businesses. Their livelihood was no longer based on that. So they betrayed us. The intellectuals, what I've told you about intellectuals being mercenaries, is from that experience. That the intellectuals, particularly because I was one of the first rebels, also viewed like an intellectual. So the intellectuals who remained with Mr. Chiluba had to go out of their way to disassociate themselves from me. Even my bosom buddies have records in Parliament. Mushota saying, the Honorable Member for Mungu is a friend of mine, but I won't let friendship hammers me. Dean stands up to say, no, this is how Hitler was born. I said, this Deepak Patel stood up, hammered me. So I learned that lesson. Now, the trade union, we thought it is a strong leg because artificially it looked very organized. In fact, some of the things we wanted that MMD to be born running, we should use their structures. Okay? So our fear with Mr. Chiluba was that he's such a trade unionist, he may not balance the interest of other sectors. He will lean towards the workers. But once we were in government, he actually destroyed the little support base Kaunda had left for the trade union movement. He wanted to swallow it into UNIP, but he wanted to swallow it whole. Now the unswallowed trade union movement was shattered. Like now, I mean, it hardly features. If you are a worker, I don't think it's your first call of port. So each of these legs, I misjudged all of them. And all of them demonstrated betrayal of the cause. So those are some of the lessons which one hopes that the new generation would learn from our mistakes, our misconception, our misjudgment. Because the struggle itself must continue. The struggle must continue. Development and democracy is part of the freedom movement of Africa.
Honorable, a few questions before we come to an end in the interest of time. But looking at privatization, which you rushed so much, somebody said, you know, Pastor Chiluba, Britain started privatizing in 1964, but they are still at 60%, they still own assets. Yeah. Zambia started privatizing in 1991. 7 years down the road, we had privatized 90% of our assets. Was privatization a good thing that we even killed Zambia with?
No, Zambia would have died anyway. I know some people say it had houses in London, but you don't run an airline on that. All that was part of corruption anyway. Because Zambia Airways did not need to have houses in New York or in London. You see, you have mentioned it, that part of the fault line is not identify what the problem is. The problem was not that Zambia Airways is owned by the state. Ethiopia has been owned by the state from the emperor, Mengistu, the last president, the present president. It's owned by the state. In fact, under Haile Selassie, it was owned by the state, but at one time it only had 3 directors. And up to now, it's the longest surviving, most successful African airline, state-run. But it has the fortune that it was in a country where whether the government was imperial or self-proclaimed communist or self-proclaimed liberal, they left it alone. They don't interfere with it. Okay? So, if you are interfering in Zambia Airways and it collapses, then you say the solution, you don't say we stop interfering. You say the solution is to privatize. It's a wrong solution. Because the problem has not been identified. In fact, for Zambia, if we take the mines for instance, all these words are fake. You see, we thought we nationalized the mines from Anglo-American. But one, they were being paid back from production. 2, they had management contract. Management contract comes with decisions over purchasing. Where they were purchasing from, they were purchasing from their own trading houses. Then we were paying the management fee. Okay? Which means the 10 years it took ZCCM to collapse while it was in nationalized hand. Those from whom we took it lost nothing.
They gained?
No, because they were earning upfront. Loss or no loss, they got paid management fee. Loss or no loss, you paid for your purchases from their purchasing houses. Loss or no loss, the technical staff of theirs are being paid. So when it started failing all those, then we switch back, now we will privatize. Then there's, these are useless. Like Penza used to say, some of these companies, it's cheaper, it's more profitable to give them away, to pay people to take them over. So they had already tuned our minds that our asset, our key national economic asset, was valueless. So that now, when you privatize, the same guys from whom you took it in 68, 69, get it back. This time with more political leverage, because before we took it over, they were scared of this new black government. It's talking about Zambianization, it's talking about upgrading Zambians and that sort of thing. It was nationalistic. By the time they came back, we no longer had a nationalistic government. We had a government leadership who thinks that the greatest credit you could get is for the IMF to say you're a good boy. So they have a field day up to now. Now, instead of worrying about Oppenheimer, we are worrying about the Chinese, we are worrying about the Europeans, the Arabs, so that both nationalization and privatization retained the same faulty system.
In 1967, Honorable, Simon Mwansaka-Pwepwe is on record to have said that if we don't handle our independence very well, colonizers will come back in form of investors. They will come back in form of investors. I am saying this, you've just alluded to the Chinese, and I have nothing against the Chinese, but when you see what's happening, how much land is being taken, and the jobs which these people are doing. The other day I asked Honorable Minister Doris Leah that at what point did things change? Because during that time, you can't come from England as a teacher and you want to be teachers. You put Zambians first, unless there was something that a Zambian could not do. There was that policy in place. But now we are having Chinese cooking Nshima in the market. I went to the market there and the Chinese are seated. And I said, what is she? Has she come to eat Nshima? No, she owns this place. Now, I said to myself, wait a minute. In China, they don't eat Nshima. When did she learn to cook Nshima and start selling it to Zambians? And you mean Zambians can't cook Nshima? So I have a lot of difficulties in my heart, Honorable. What will we do to bring that self-dignity?
My view is that we must recognize the cancerous nature of faulty policies. That what we are seeing now are worsening manifestation of a disease that was always there. Okay? The idea that if we have good foreigners, we need them. The idea that we can have our development directed from outside. The greater damage, going back to the era you were referring to, the immediate pre-independence, one of the factors that the spirit of nationalism was very strong at the beginning. People wanted change. They wanted African advancement. They were nationalistic. But year after year, that nationalism became compromised by prioritization of personal and sectional interests. Okay? So that given that development, then when you reach the point when we were so indebted that we were being praised for liberalizing the economy, that your best African leaders are those who say we can liberalize everything. Okay? Now, having not recaptured the nationalist spirit, having instead captured this liberalization spirit with no bounds. Because now it's free for all. So there was no decision point that from now on the Chinese should cook fish or should cook shima. No. It is part of the disease manifesting itself that we disempowered ourselves.
But Botswana has put something like that.
Yes, this is in fact a good example that you see. Botswana, which seems to have been born with nationalism, and whose nationalism was better rooted than ours. Our nationalism needed being built up, not through dictatorship. The attempt to build Zambian nationalism from dictatorship retarded our development of nationalism. Because once you remove the dictatorship, you find that from the time you introduced research, we are still where you left us, maybe worse. Now, in Botswana, I don't know whether it's recent or in the past, but there's news that they actually have a law which lists the businesses, the business sectors, and business activities, even within sectors, which nobody except a Botswana citizen can get a license for. Now, that is the sort of beginning, but to be able to implement that, it means there is a preparatory ground that is fertile. In Botswana, one notices that the most junior civil servants, for a long time, not just now, have had housing loans, car loans. Then the Botswana, more than us, believe that their real home is in their village. So that's where they build the houses. They still keep, you could be PS, you could be president, you still keep your cow, you still have a crow, which you want to visit every weekend, and which you visit every weekend. Almost every part of Botswana has an all-weather tar road. I went as far as even in the desert. Which means that when you have this program, that this is restricted to the Botswana, the infrastructure and the mental culture is in place. If the mental culture is not in place, yes, you could say, oh, this sector is reserved for Zambians. Then I say, oh, I'm a Zambian, I apply for a license. If my mind is in the wrong place, then I use my license with my name for anybody else to use.
Honorable, my director has been warning me time and time. You see, these are some of the things that Camnet TV is all about.
Yes.
National matters.
Yes.
I believe with all my heart that we can fix what has gone wrong. I'm a believer in correcting the wrong.
In fact, we can't accept the reverse. That we are doomed. No, we can't accept that. Or that the struggle for freedom and development has failed. No. We just have said we haven't succeeded yet. We must find a way. Maybe we didn't go about it the right way, but ultimately we have to keep faith. By
the special grace of God, we will forge on as Camnet TV to be part of that nationalism. This is what I think. Having Honorable Akashambatwa as a billionaire in Mongo does not worry me, because that part of the country is being developed. Having a Piri, a billionaire, it doesn't worry me. But when you don't take the national interests, you place foreigners above your own. I'm not an economist, but that amounts to capital flight. Your kwacha can perpetually go through financial diarrhea, if you like, because there is nothing to stop it. These people have got interest to bank and develop their countries, whereas the Zambians have nowhere to go.
Yes, exactly. And we get cheated so easily. There are periods when America is preaching free enterprise. But when they are in trouble, they go back to nationalism. But with us, they've taught us free enterprise, and we hang on to it. Even when there is a problem, we don't review that under these circumstances. You remember in the American debate, there was this guy who said he's a socialist. They were attacking him. Socialism is bad, but when this virus hit them, they are more socialistic than the Soviet Union right now. More socialistic than the Chinese. Because the national situation calls for government state intervention. They are not hanging on to their ideology of free enterprise. They may preach it to other people, but for themselves, for their survival, they are flexible on when to apply it and when not to apply it.
Camnet TV viewers, time does not permit me to extract more words of wisdom and insight from this national figure who is with me in the studio. And I must say that in Bemba, this man grew up in Kitwe, Honorable, he understands it. In Bemba we say, umuliro uchingira abakulu taocha. If you don't have elderly people to guide in certain matters, you are doomed. And my grandmother, my grandfather, they will simply say that umushu wabula abakulu ifipo bafirafura. And we are so grateful.
Thank you very much.
We are so grateful that you came, Honorable, and please, we'll keep on calling on you.
Yes.
This generation, my generation, we need you. We need this nation. No matter how long it takes, we need to fix certain things in this nation. This has been your pastor and host with Honorable Akashamba Twambikusita Wanikwa, the first Minister of Science and Technology in the Chiluba government. I am so honored. Please greet our mother as you go back home. And once again, condolences to our sister Mbololo, who went to be with the Lord recently. May God bless you and comfort you.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen. This has been your host, Pastor Chiluba, National Matters. Keep watching Camnet TV, and remember, Camnet TV is not just another channel.